From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Gulf Coast studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast. This is Andre Johnson Jr. Very important, the JR at the end of the name. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, to share, to rate, to review. If you are watching us on YouTube, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button, get the bell notification. But when we drop that, fire content. Also, hello to the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Glad you have found us here. And as we always say, please stay here and please tell your friends about this wonderful network known as the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. It is Friday here as we move through the month of January in 2026. Andre, you and I took a little field trip. We made it over to the Inside New Orleans Eric Asher show. So thank you to Eric for having us. So be sure to watch that show, the two of us talking to Eric Asher. We're back in studio now as we close out this week. And you know, you're at this point in the calendar. You're looking at the finish of the season with the teams that are available, championship weekend, but conference championship weekend. But you also have, you're looking at all the off-season building blocks that are starting to form, and that's where we're going to try to navigate this here today with the off-season piece. It's a big one. We've talked about him before, but we're going to kind of you'll see in just a second. But first things first, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Like you mentioned, we got to go to the Eric Asher show, talk a lot of Saints like we do on here. We also got to hit LSU, Tulane, the Pelicans, a lot of different sports. So it was fun going there. And now we're back here looking at the Saints. And we're at the time of the year, especially when your team is not playing. Mm-hmm. We're at the time of the year where rankings start to come out, where we're looking at who are the top guys at this position, that position. And on social media, I've been seeing a lot of people working at a lot of big companies ranking receivers. Mm-hmm. And in those top 10 rankings, as high as number 6 that I've seen, is one wide receiver for the Saints that is looking for a contract extension in Chris Olave, which it's worth mentioning. We were not in these seats. We were at the old studio with the bricks behind us. And about this time, maybe a little later than this time last year, we had a conversation about, is Chris Olave a top 20 receiver? Mm-hmm. And I think both of us landed at the time on no. Chris Olave comes back during the season, has a career year. Now he's in top 10 talk, Sean. But now have we changed our minds? Forget top 20. Mm-hmm. Do we agree that heading into a year where he's going to want an extension, Chris Olave is a top 10 receiver in the NFL?
Oh, man, this is such a good topic. And this was not as easy to nail down. Like, I had my initial thought of where he might land. Then I started going through the names. It can be very subjective if you let it be, because there's a lot of image. There's a lot of narrative around certain players. Sometimes it matches what they actually do. Sometimes it does not, good or bad. So this was a very interesting, and it's also Chris Olave. I got to say, I have slid back and forth with Chris Olave more than probably any other player on this roster, because he was a former first-round pick, because he plays wide receiver, because he's had those moments of inconsistency, but he is coming off a career year, and he's heading into it's not technically a contract year, but to get the extension that he wants. Right. And the Saints are obviously going to want to pay him, and he's going to want to get paid, and he's probably going to want to get paid top 10 money. Mm. Chris Olave, just the numbers, okay? This season, 7th in the NFL in receptions, 6th in targets, 8th in receiving touchdowns. I didn't get the exact number, but he was pretty low on receptions or 20-plus yards. So explosive 20-plus yards wasn't quite as high as some of the others. So if we're framing this question, is Chris Olave a top 10 receiver? My response is he is not a top 10 receiver yet, but I think he can break into the top 10 this year. And when I really did this and really started to look at it, it was less about him and more about there's a lot of really good wide receivers out there. Mm-hmm. So I compiled the list. I'm going to go through it. Andre, you're going to, and I'll tell you where I officially rank him. Andre, you can go after me. So this is how I went through it. There's the no-brainers. There's the Jamar Chase. There's the Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown. And look now, Puka Nacua has become a no-brainer right now. So that is 4. Okay. Then you had, this is who I had. Some may agree, some may not. As much as he can be a knucklehead sometimes, I still think A.J. Brown is the number 1 receiver in the NFL. So I got to put him on there. DK Metcalf didn't exactly finish the season the way he wanted to with the fan altercation, but I still got to put him on there. CeeDee Lamb, I got to put him on there. Nico Collins, I got to put him on there. Now, this is no particular order. This is the receivers that right now I would rank slightly above Chris Olave. Jackson Smith and Jigba, JSN, I got to put him on there. George Pickens is a tricky one. It was a risky one. It was a tricky one. And I went back and forth and back and forth. Maybe he's my wild card, but at least for this list, I put him on there. And then he's older, but he always makes plays. He's still alive right now. Stephon Diggs. That was my last one. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Oh, I forgot one. Devontae Adams.
Right.
Devontae Adams, 12. So I would right now rank Chris Olave 13th in the NFL. Obviously 1 with the Saints, but 13th in the NFL. And I think by having him that high on this list, and look at his peers from the 2022 draft class: Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Chris Olave, Jameson Williams. I can make a case that Olave has been the best of those guys. You can make a case, but it's funny how neither one has really separated themselves, but they've all been pretty productive. But by me ranking him 13th, I might have answered the question, which is maybe he is a 1 after all, a true 1 after all. If I got him 13th on this list, maybe he is number 1 after all. So Chris Olave, my final answer. Is he a top 10 receiver? I would not rank him top 10 yet. I would rank him 13th, but I think if we had this discussion next year at this time, I think, yes, he could definitely be in the top 10. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, everybody you named was essentially a 1 on their team, except for George Pickens, who could be a 1 on most teams in the league, and Devontae Adams, who's the number 2 on one of the top offenses in the league. And probably the biggest name that made people raise their eyebrows or drop their jaws would be Stephon Diggs. But it's worth mentioning, Stephon Diggs has the number 1 catch rate in the NFL.
Yeah.
83% is his catch rate, you know. And looking at the numbers, you said some of them, I'll expand on them, because when I look at Chris Olave, you have to take his season into context. You have to look at certain factors and certain numbers. Number 1, he played with Spencer Rattler and a rookie quarterback this year. So it's not like he was out there catching passes from Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, and, you know, guys like that. But he was, because he played with Rattler and Tyler Shuck, he was peppered with targets. I mean, he got a lot of targets this year. Among wide receivers, he was top 5. He's top 6 or 6 overall, because Trey McBride in Arizona is a tight end and he gets a lot of catches. But among receivers, he was top 5, especially at the end of the year where all the receivers started dropping. You trade Shaheed, you release Brandon Cooks, Devon Vele gets hurt, and you have to rely on Chris Olave more and more. He almost got an unrealistic amount of targets for a guy, you know, with his role. Those are the pros. But you do have to look at the cons. He was 38 in the NFL in catch percentage at 64%, 21st in yard after the catch, 24th in yards per target, and 55th in yards per reception. So, you know, you do have to take that into account as well. So I made my list.
Is this you're ranking them in order?
Yeah, in order.
Okay, so mine was no particular order, but you got your list in order.
I got Jamar Chase number 1, best receiver in the world. Puka Nacua number 2. Probably the guy who's going to win Offensive Player of the Year, Jackson Smith and Jigba at number 3. Justin Jefferson, Jettis, who's coming off a bad year for him, but Jettis is without a doubt still a top 5 receiver. I have him at number 4. CeeDee Lamb at number 5. Amon-Ra St. Brown number 6. A name that it's easy to forget about because he didn't really play this year, but when he comes back next year, just how dynamic we've seen him be over the course of his career, and he's still the most dangerous receiver in the NFL, that's Tyreek Hill. I have him at number 7. A.J. Brown, who It's funny. I kind of want my receivers to be divas. The diva receivers always seem to play at a higher level. A.J. Brown fits that mold. If he doesn't get enough targets, he will let you know about it.
Kellen knows all about that.
Right. But, hey, he got those targets and he put up big numbers. I've got him at number 8. At number 9, like I said, a guy who's a number 2 for Dallas, but he'd be a number 1 most other places. That's George Pickens. And when you reach this spot, those top 9, I think, are better than Chris Olave. Not head and shoulders for all of them, but I can make a definitive argument. Each one of those guys is better than Chris Olave. Once you get to 10, that's really where it got hard for me. And I was like, I could start making an argument to put Chris Olave at number 10. And that's when I really stopped and I paused and I thought long and hard about it. But I have at number 10, I landed at Nico Collins from the Houston Texans. Number 11, I have Devontae Smith from the Philadelphia Eagles. Because when you look at the Philadelphia Eagles and Devontae Smith, Devontae has similar numbers to Chris Olave. But he did it on a running team in Philadelphia with a quarterback who's been very up and down as the number 2 option, and he did it on similar numbers. I think he's got like 100 less yards than Chris Olave on 23 less catches than Chris Olave. So I know when we talked about this back in the day last year, we kind of put Chris Olave in that wide receiver 2 vein with Devontae Smith, with Jalen Waddle, with guys like, who else? T. Higgins, a Zay Flowers, a Jamison Williams, a Cortland Sutton. I think he's risen near the top of that ranking.
I think so too.
When you talk about him in the vein of wide receiver 2s, I think the only one that you could put on his level is Devontae Smith, who I had at 11, and then at number 12 is number 12. That's where I have Chris Olave, which is ahead of a Devontae Adams from me, ahead of a Drake London from me, ahead of a Garrett Wilson, ahead of a T. Higgins, ahead of DK Metcalf, Diggs, Teteroy McMillan, Cortland Sutton, Jamison Williams, Jalen Waddle, Zay Jones, and Rashee Rice. I have Chris Olave over all of those guys. And this is a Chris Olave that, when you asked me last offseason, I probably ranked him about 23, 24.
Yeah.
So taking a jump from, for me, 23, 24, all the way up to 12 is a big deal. He's got a quarterback now where you're going to have, barring injury, knock on wood, you're going to have the same quarterback for 17 games. And you've got a quarterback that played better than most in the second half of the season and really locked in and zoned in on forming that connection with Chris Olave. So it's not a stretch, like you said. If he can jump from, for me, the 20s to number 12 in 1 year, it's not a stretch that he could realistically be a top 10, have a good enough year, top 6 or 7 receiver in the NFL by this time next year.
So you had him 12th. I had him 13th. I didn't have Devontae Smith ahead of him. You did, but I had Devontae Adams ahead of him. You did not. And I had DK. That must have been a difference in DK. I had DK in there.
You had DK and I had Tyreek Hill.
And I had Diggs.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? It's like, you could say, well, like Diggs is older, Tyreek Hill is older. So you can make it that that would be an argument against them for Chris Olave. It's very subjective. It's also interesting. I don't think they're truly, despite there's an abundance of receivers in the NFL, but I don't think there are 32 wide receiver 1s in the NFL.
Agree.
And it's always interesting to watch wide receiver 2 because, for instance, T. Higgins, would he be a 1 somewhere else?
Certain
Probably.
places.
What about Devontae Smith?
Yeah, you go to Tennessee, you'll be there wide receiver 1.
And how good would he be as a 1?
That's what it comes
See,
down
I think
to.
the best 2 right now is probably Pickens. So I guess my point is it's hard when you start looking at wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. Okay, is this guy better because he has this presence? Olave didn't have much help at all on the perimeter this year, especially as the season went down the stretch. Without Vele, they lost Shaheed with the trade. And as you mentioned, there was a change at quarterback. He got better in some areas, but there's still a significant amount of things he can get even better at that will launch him. You said it. What is it, yards per reception? Was he what?
Yards per reception, he was 55th.
55th. Run after catch is always going to be something with him. That's why he kills it with the intermediate routes and that's why, he's able to be effective in the intermediate routes because when he catches it, he doesn't get much after that.
Yeah.
So that's something he could certainly get better at. And I think it's important to point out he did make a leap from there from his rookie year to now in run after catch. Knock on wood, he did better at staying healthy. He had the unfortunate situation with the blood clots? The blood clot, yeah. I mean, very scary situation. Forget football, just in life. It's a very scary situation. But outside of that, he was able to play in all 16 games. Seems to have developed the Tyler Shuck chemistry. So I'm not putting him in the top 10 yet, but I will say, and I think you would agree, it's a pleasant surprise, it's a welcome surprise, and it's an encouraging sign that we were not all in on Chris Olave, and now we are much more in on Chris Olave than we were. We wouldn't have put him in our top 20 last year. Now he's on the outskirts of top 10. That's significant growth. And the question is, what does that translate to dollars and cents when he signs that extension coming up in a couple of months?
Exactly, because, when you look at the top guys in this league, you look at guys who defenses are planning their entire game plan around. When you go to Cincinnati, Joe Burrow's very good, Chase Brown's very good, T. Higgins is on the other side, but you're not losing where Jamar Chase is. You go to the Rams, you're going to find Puka Nacua. If you're playing the Seahawks, whether he's in the slot, outside, you need to find JSN. The Lions, you have to game plan around Amon-Ra St. Brown. When Tyreek Hill is healthy, you cannot step on the field and not take into account how Tyreek can hurt you down the field. I don't know if it feels that way for Chris Olave just yet. It seems like the Saints offense, if you're game planning around Chris Olave, it's because they don't have anybody else that really scares you on offense, because this is an offense that lacks playmakers. But that's kind of the next step, because before the season, we said it. I think we were ranking who has the most to prove this season, and I either had Chris Olave or Spencer Rattler before the year at number one. Spencer Rattler proving if he could be a real starting quarterback in this league. That didn't happen. But Chris Olave proving that he could be a wide receiver one in this league. And it's been one of the biggest arguments around Chris Olave. Is he a really good two, or is he one of those lower end wide receiver ones? And when you look at the conversations of the guys we have him with, we don't have him above A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra, George Pickens, Nico Collins. But the fact that he's in that conversation and above guys like Drake London, who some people may consider a wide receiver one. I had him above DK, who people consider a wide receiver one. Oh, yeah. Cortland Sutton, who's a wide receiver one in Denver. Terrell McMillan, who, whether I agree with it or not, will probably win Rookie of the Year. Yeah. The fact that he's in these conversations means that Chris Olave has taken a big step.
Yeah, he has. And I'm willing to put him in, like I said, I don't think there are 32 wide receiver ones in the NFL, one for each team. I think there's probably
8, 9.
Whatever, yeah. But I'm willing to put Olave in that next tier, the bottom of that next tier, however you stack it. So we're kind of hovering around, low teens. You got 12, I got 13. He can certainly improve, and chemistry with Shuck will only get better, and he'll look at the tangible areas where he can improve, catch percentage, yards per reception, those types of things. But will also help him. It will help him, and it may look like it hurts him stat-wise, but it'll help him, is another dynamic receiver in the room. And that it has to be addressed, either free agency or in the draft, or maybe even both, because that's what we mean when we bring the whole thing up. Right now, you have a quarterback, you have a really good wide receiver, but if you add some pieces there, both their games will go up.
Absolutely. And like I said, these 4 stats that I named, start going up on those. 38th in catch percentage. We're talking about Chris Olave like this now. We were not talking about, forget before the season, in October.
Yeah.
When he was playing with Spencer Rattler, we weren't talking about Chris Olave like this, because the balls that were coming to him, he had a lot of big drops. Even the one in Miami that, in hindsight, could have changed the entire trajectory of your season that you dropped. Chris Olave had a lot of drops, so raising that catch rate up, catching the passes that come to you, yards after catch, which I think for him is more of a health thing because he's had so many health issues.
Yeah.
You guys see it watching the games. Chris Olave catches the ball and he just falls down. He's not really trying to shake anybody out their shoes or gain extra yards. He takes the yards he gets on the catch and calls it a day. But these guys on this list, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, especially in that screen game, these are guys who can turn a slant into a 60-yard touchdown. Chris Olave is not one of those guys yet. Yards per target, which I think is more of a result of playing half a season with Spencer Rattler, who had one of the lower
very
yards.
boxed in early in the season.
Yards per targets in the league. You could say the same about yards per reception, but still, two things that Chris Olave talked about with the media. This past offseason and the offseason before, he said he wanted to be a more dangerous deep threat. That goes to yards per target and yards per reception. And he wanted to be better with yards after the catch. That goes to 21st in YAC. If he can improve on those two things, then all of a sudden you're looking at a Nico Collins and saying, give me Olave.
Yeah.
And A.J. Brown, give me Olave. George Pickens, I want Olave. Yeah. Like I said, if you wanted to rank him 10th, I wouldn't agree with you, but I wouldn't argue with you. If you had him above Devontae and Nico, I think George Pickens is the line of which I can't put him over then, and I will argue with you about that. But he's in that 10 to 14 range.
Well, and that's just it. The fact that this came out and we weren't like, oh, that's ridiculous. Like we were like, now think about it. Let me write it out. Let me talk about it. Because you and I were kicking around topics and we're like, that's a good podcast topic because like you really stack up the receivers and there aren't a whole lot more that are clear cut head and shoulders above Chris Olave. So whatever he did this year, keep doing it next year. I think this throw-in session that they're supposed to have out in San Diego is certainly going to help with the chemistry he and Tyler Shuck and the rest of the guys. And then whoever they add to that room, I think will help everyone.
It's in San Diego?
What's that?
It's in San Diego?
Something like that. I thought that's what he said.
We know somebody who.
I thought he said something about
familiar with this team who lives out in that San Diego area.
I thought that's what he said on the Toronto Armstead podcast. Maybe I was wrong.
No, I'm saying if that's the case, hey, we know somebody who might show up.
Hey, you never know. But I do think there's a stuff like this, stuff like Shuck, who was a finalist for the AP Rookie of the Year. It makes this time of year exciting. And it makes it, and you feel the, man, wish we could start playing tomorrow type feel. And just try to put your mind in this spot last year. Didn't know what was happening with Derek Carr. You didn't have a head coach yet. You went to the Senior Bowl without a coaching staff.
Sheesh.
By the way, we'll get to the Senior Bowl next week. I'll be heading to Mobile. We'll have a topic on that on Monday. It's a very good one, in my opinion. And now you're here. Like, my psyche's a funny thing, man. It's like it's amazing how much the mindset changes just with a couple of moves and a couple decisions and a couple developments. Here the Saints are.
There wasn't a single thing to be excited about at this time last year. I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah. I mean, when like you said, you didn't have a coach, and even looking at the coaching hires, the question with all of those guys is why would they want to come to the Saints, You didn't have a quarterback.
Remember Joe Brady and Cliff Kingsbury both shut down the interviews or something, took themselves out or something, yeah.
Yeah, and you're looking at quarterback, and not a lot of people are high on Derek Carr at the time. You've got an aging roster. There's just not a lot to be excited about at this time last year. And now fast forward 360 whatever days, and now it's like, man, we may have a top 10 receiver in Chris Olave. Mm-hmm. We did just have a top 10 defense and a top 5 pass defense, and hopefully you can retain most, if not all of those guys.
Yeah.
You've got legit young talent on this team. I mean, we ranked the draft class last week. You
gave
him an A. I gave him an A+. I mean, the Saints having the best draft class in the league, a quarterback going forward. You may even want to say a franchise quarterback, a young coach that's learning, and the guy who – I would need another 30 minutes on this one, but the guy who should win Rookie of the Year in Tyler Shuck. So it's, a very exciting time.
When they name that Rookie of the Year, I can promise you we will have a podcast about it. I can promise you that.
I won't be happy unless
we'll see if he wins. We'll see. We got a little time. We'll see. But there is football this weekend, championship weekend, conference championship weekend. New England versus Denver, and then Seattle versus LA. Divisional round weekend, I picked Seattle, New England. I try to be as consistent as possible, so I am sticking with that. But, Andre, you know what game worries me? LA, Seattle. Because watching what LA did last week in the snow, withstanding that massive swing of emotion with the unreal Caleb Williams play, and to still survive all that and win, man, they are battle-tested. And Darnold has never played in the conference championship game. Mike McDonald was his first time there. That That's the one I'm most concerned with, but I've got to stick with it. I'm going New England, Seattle for the Super Bowl. What about you?
I'm going New England Rams for the Super Bowl because I said it earlier this week. The Rams remind me of the 2024 Kansas City Chiefs, a team that wasn't necessarily playing above and beyond better than everybody else, but they were pros at clutch football, you know. When the rubber needed to meet the road, when you needed those Chiefs to come through, they came through in the clutch, and that's what it's been for the Rams. You know, the Rams struggle with the Carolina Panthers in the wild card, a game they shouldn't have struggled with because the Panthers are not as good as the Rams. But when the game was close late, the Rams made the plays that needed to be made. With the Bears, when the game was close late, even after Caleb Williams' miracle play, the Rams made the plays that needed to be made. I think this will be a close game against the Seahawks, and I think the Rams will make the plays that need to be made. And on the AFC side, I'm actually surprised. I mean, the line last time I looked was plus 205, which is closer than you would think that it would be for the Broncos.
5.5.
Yeah, exactly.
Plus
yeah, and then the spread plus 5.5. So it's like, man, this is a relatively
for Denver plus 5.5. So
close game. Even though it's going to be, you know, the backup quarterback starting out there, but I think the Patriots' defense is going to be too much for him. Drake May hasn't been great. He's just been overshadowed by the fact that Herbert and C.J. Stroud were worse than him. Yeah. But I think they can put together a winning game and advance to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. By the way, thank you all for commenting on Monday's pod about whether or not you're rooting for Sean Payton.
It was a little closer than I expected.
Close-ish. It was still majority not rooting for him.
I thought it'd be like
but enough said they were to make it a little bit of a. It wasn't just a total, no one's touching it. My TikTok that I posted, people are still commenting on it 4 or 5 days later. Overwhelming majority, hell no, I am not pulling for Sean Payton. We'll see what he does this week in Denver. Enjoy the games. Enjoy the weekend. We got to get out of here. Andre Johnson Jr., Sean Fazende. We'll catch you guys next time on Overtime.